Hi, Acadiana. I'm Meteorologist Dave Baker. Welcome to your Wednesday edition of Let's Talk Tropics. This is actually going to be the hurricane season finale, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to give you a good cliffhanger at the end of this, maybe an early prediction for 2025, but as the hurricane season is wrapping up and it's looking a little bit less likely that we're going to see anything develop, plus we've got Thanksgiving and Black Friday that's coming up, and the end of the hurricane season is actually going to be on Saturday, so this is going to be the season finale of Let's Talk Tropics, and of course we'll get started once again in the spring, and in between here I'll probably take about a week off for this midday show, and then I've got something else up my sleeve. We can talk about other weather conditions across the country and maybe follow different storms as they move from the Pacific eastward or how they develop, and kind of give you more of a long range forecast on how things are going to be affecting our region, the way we would do with Let's Talk Tropics, where we're kind of watching out 1 or 2 weeks ahead to see what might be coming and kind of give you a little better idea of what's coming up when we have some of these winter storms. But I really appreciate everybody watching Let's Talk Tropics over the course of the hurricane season. Again, this will be the season finale, but we're going to kick this thing back up in the spring. Real quick, want to show you that it is cloudy across Acadiana. It is warm and it's muggy out there too. Temperature hovering around 74 degrees. Dew point at 66. Those winds, though, have picked up out of the south-southeast at 14, and they're gusting at times close to 30 miles per hour. The pressure's dropped to 29.92, and we do have a couple of isolated showers that have already developed here on the radar. Kind of give you a little bit of a shot of that there, and went with a 20% rain chance here for today, but you can see that there are some showers that have developed over the far western sections, primarily over Jeff Davis Parish. So if you live in Jennings or over toward Lake Arthur, maybe around Lacassine, you might see some of that rain coming up here, and we're going to see additional rains developing over the course of the evening hours as a cold front starts to slide a little bit closer to the area. So looking at the traffic cams, again, a lot of cloud cover out there, although still a few peaks of sunshine here and there. A lot of folks might be getting on the road heading off to their Thanksgiving holiday plans. A lot of folks did leave over the weekend. More will go tomorrow or today. I'm going to be doing a little traveling tomorrow, but I will still be here for Acadiana Weather Today's morning show, both on Thursday and again on Friday. But you can see any fog that we had earlier this morning has gone ahead and dissipated, so we're in good shape there. So I wanted to go over the 2024 hurricane season, just kind of give you a little bit of a briefing here. And of course, we had a number of tropical systems, 18 named storms overall at 2024 Atlantic hurricane season, of course, marked by above average activity. Normally we have about 14, including a record-breaking rise in the number of storms after a mid-season lull. Of course, there were 18 named storms, 11 of those becoming hurricanes, 5 major hurricanes. 5 hurricanes made landfall here in the U.S. In fact, all 5 of them made landfall on the Gulf Coast, and 2 of those were major hurricanes. And overall, the season's activity kind of aligned with many of the preseason forecasts, although we had that lull in the middle of the summer. It did appear that maybe those early season forecasts are going to be a little bit on the high end, but we really kicked things up into high gear in October as well as November. So as we look, Hurricane Beryl, of course, was the first major hurricane. It made history as the earliest Category 5 on record, weakening before landfall, but it still caused significant storm surge and flooding through the Windward Islands, and then it just kind of grazed the southern tip of Jamaica, and then it moved across the Yucatan Peninsula, eventually making its way into portions of the Gulf of Mexico, and then made its way over toward Texas and made a lot of storm surge flooding and also major power outages there over Texas. It hit Matagorda, Texas as a Category 1 storm. Now locally, later on in the season, we had Hurricane Francine, which of course made landfall here in Louisiana. There for a while, it was looking like the Acadiana region was going to be taking a direct hit, but it made a little bit of a turn toward the right and made landfall over Terrebonne Parish as a Cat 2 with 100-mile-per-hour winds, widespread flooding and power outages plaguing Louisiana for more than a week. And then things really started to kick up with Hurricane Helene when it made landfall on the Florida Gulf Coast as a Cat 4 on September 26th. That, of course, bringing catastrophic flooding, widespread wind damage, storm surge in western Florida, over 230 fatalities, mostly in the Carolinas, becoming the deadliest hurricane since Katrina. Helene also marking the first time that NOAA predicted that the system would become a major hurricane even before the system had formed. And then a big surprise was Hurricane Milton, which hit Siesta Key, Florida as a Cat 3 on October 9th. That one bringing 46 tornadoes and torrential rainfall and destructive storm surge. It also rapidly intensified with winds increasing 90 miles per hour in just 24 hours. The National Hurricane Center forecasting Milton's potential to become a major landfalling hurricane just 2 days before it became a Category 1 storm. And of course, it went from a tropical storm to a Cat 5 in nothing flat. Of course, there were other notable storms. Oscar, which was that teeny storm in the northern Caribbean. Raphael, which became the strongest November Gulf hurricane, and then threatening the Gulf Coast for a while before kind of meandering in a circle in the central Gulf. Eventually, the remnants of Raphael made its way into Acadiana. Remember a few weeks ago when we had all that torrential rainfall and the street flooding across Lafayette? Well, that was all because of what was left of Raphael. And then, of course, Tropical Storm Sarah making its way over Central America, soaking that region. Of course, the storms were powerful reminders of nature's unpredictable and destructive force, and those storms could be continuing to get even stronger as the climate changes. So let's look at what's going on right now. Again, there's not a lot out there, so we'll kind of talk about our weather locally, and we'll also talk about what might be going on in the western part of the Caribbean. But you can see there on the national image that everything's kind of zipping from west to east. There's no big troughs or any ridges that are there. We've called this a zonal flow in the upper levels. So low pressure is kind of moving out of North Texas, and it's going to zip its way toward the Tennessee Valley, and it is going to bring a cold front through the area. So we'll get some showers to develop a little bit later on tonight, and those will linger into the early part of Thursday morning for Thanksgiving. And then we're going to turn a bit blustery and colder late in the afternoon before a really big punch of cool air starts to slide in here. Unfortunately, the wave heights are still a little bit on the high side there in our nearshore and offshore waters, about 2 to 3 feet in the nearshore waters, 3 to 5 feet in the offshore waters, and we're going to still see some gusty winds out there out of the south. But you can see way out in the Gulf of Mexico, it is a very pretty day. Along the coast of Texas and Louisiana and even eastward toward the Florida Panhandle, we've got a lot of cloud cover out there. Central America, fair skies over much of that region, and the western part of the Caribbean, not looking too bad, but you see the thunderstorm activity there in the central part of the Caribbean. This is that little area of convection that we've been watching here now for a number of days. It doesn't look any better organized, although there is a broad trough of low pressure that's developing in that particular area. We do expect it to sit here for a couple of days, then maybe meander its way off toward the southwest a little bit, where it might still have a chance of becoming a tropical system. Although the chances are very low, there is still a chance, which is very unusual for the end of November and the early part of December. Do I think this is going to develop into a tropical system between now and the end of the month? Probably not, but some of the models are still suggesting maybe some tropical development off the Nicaraguan coast, perhaps in the first week of December, which would be really unusual because, as I showed you yesterday, there's only been 13 tropical and subtropical systems that have actually formed during the month of November since 1851. So what's that, every 7 or 8 years, 10 years, something like that? So it's pretty unusual to see anything develop, especially during the month of December. The rest of the tropical Atlantic is very quiet, stretching from Africa over to the Windward Islands. You got these big cold fronts that are starting to make their way across the middle and central part of the Atlantic Ocean, and that's going to be sending some of those bigger storms across the Atlantic and then over into Europe as you get more of those winter storms that kind of cruise their way across the Atlantic Ocean. But water temperatures, again, there over the southwestern Caribbean are still quite high, although they are now starting to come down a little bit. But most of the waters that we're looking at here are still above normal for the end of the hurricane season. We'll have to wait and see what happens over the course of the winter and see if these water temperatures stay up, because that could be a precursor to 2025's hurricane season. If these water temperatures stay way above normal like they did over the course of the winter last year, we might be looking at another robust hurricane season, especially if La Nina kicks in and wants to hold into the early part of the hurricane season. So depending on how strong La Nina gets and how long it wants to hold on, We might have a little bit of a different hurricane season next year if it stays strong. We might have a lot of activity early in the season and then a little less as we go into the latter part of the season, kind of the opposite of what we were seeing here. Now, the tropical cyclone heat potential, this is kind of an old map. It's 5 days old, and sometimes this during holiday periods, I've noticed that this does not update. So this is from earlier in the week, back on the 22nd. What would that be? Sunday? Saturday or Sunday of last week. But we still have some high heat potential there in the southwestern part of the Caribbean Sea. So that's the potential to see some tropical weather developing. And you can see that the wind shear is relatively low between, let's say, Haiti and the Dominican Republic, southwestward along the Colombian coast, and then toward Panama and into Costa Rica and Nicaragua. So if that stays low and you keep that high ocean heat content and also those warmer waters, you might have a chance to get some development. So the GFS again shows more of a broad area of low pressure. It's kind of backed off a little bit more. I will say the GFS has been the one that's been predicting more of a closed center of circulation there off of Costa Rica or Nicaragua sometime during the early part of December. There's still a little bit of a hint there as you go into maybe Tuesday, Wednesday of next week, but there's still quite a bit of tropical moisture over the western part of the Caribbean Sea. So some torrential rains could be in the forecast for some of our friends down in Central America. But if you notice as this loop goes along, you see that big cold front diving southward, and that's where our surge of cold air is going to be coming from here, as you've heard in the news over the last couple of days, and what we're going to be experiencing over the course of the weekend. Euro model really doesn't show much of a low pressure area trying to develop there, not quite as robust as what we were seeing with the GFS. You see a few blips there of a low pressure center trying to get going, but again, it's pretty inconclusive. And the Canadian model has a little bit more of a low pressure center. I wouldn't say a closed center of low pressure, but we are seeing a concentration of some moderate to heavy rains there over the southwestern part of the Caribbean Sea. And then the ICON model is still showing a broad area of low pressure with some torrential rainfalls from Honduras and Nicaragua down toward Panama and even into Colombia. But again, it's kind of backed off a little bit on more of a closed center of circulation. But who knows? Again, this has been a very strange 2024 hurricane season, and we've had tropical systems in the models that were looking like they were going to be nothing. And then a couple of days later, we actually have a hurricane. And that's been kind of the thing with the models. I've seen a lot of the comments throughout the hurricane season, how the models don't know what's going on and they're all over the place and things like that. I will say, though, the long-range models, a lot of these times where it was showing a tropical system that would be developing in a week to 10 days, they all seem to do pretty good on that. It was really the short-term models that had a little bit more trouble, especially when it came to intensity and landfall location. But keep in mind, if you go back 15 or 20 years, these models performed fantastic compared to what we were used to. But there's so many models and there's so many little intricate details that we're going into now that even just a slightest move of 30 or 40 miles on a track forecast, a lot of people are going, oh, well, look, the models are out to lunch. They don't know what's going on. But I can tell you 15 years ago, if we could pinpoint where a tropical system was going to make landfall 5 days ahead within a 50-mile range, I would have called you crazy because we couldn't do that back then. And so what we're seeing now is we're seeing this high-resolution solutions of where hurricanes are going to go. And when people see them miss by just 20 miles or so, they automatically write them off like, oh, the models aren't working at all. But folks, the models are working great. And if we didn't have these models, we would be way back in time where we didn't even realize that a tropical system could be heading our way. So we are able to make these predictions so much farther ahead in advance. And we can also evacuate folks that need to, and other folks that wouldn't need to are able to stay home. And of course, when you do all this evacuating and you close things like that, there's a tremendous economic impact there as well. And if what we've seen over the last 20 years is we've been able to narrow that path down and really move the people that need to be moved and allow business to continue to go as usual just outside of the storm. So that is something we haven't been able to do that we weren't able to do 20 years ago, but now we can. So just kind of give those models a little bit of leeway and kind of remember where we have come from over the past 20 or 30 years. Also wanted to real quick, just wanted to show you the tropical storm possibilities according to the Euro. Showed you this yesterday. It was more in the 40 to 50% range, but it's kind of backed off a little bit into the 30 to 40% range. And I do expect this to kind of drop off a little bit more as we go into the rest of the week, because at this point in time, it's looking a little bit less likely that we're going to see any tropical development in that particular area. And the National Hurricane Center is also saying that there's not going to be any tropical cyclone activity here for the next 7 days. So that's going to take us through the end of the hurricane season and into the first few days of December. So again, it's not likely, but it's not impossible that we would not, that we would see a tropical system, because you can see according to this chart, you do have a little bit of activity sometimes during the month of December. Again, it's very unusual to happen, but sometimes it happens. And of course, this hurricane season being as unusual as it has been, having something develop in December, I would say probably wouldn't be as surprising as other hurricane seasons in the past. So we'll have to wait and see what happens in the 2025 hurricane season. Remember, the average number of named storms is about 14. About 11 of those, I think, become hurricanes. And about 2 to 3 become major hurricanes. Those numbers are up quite a bit in the last 30 years. When I first started in working with hurricane season here a little over 30 years ago, the average numbers were 10 named storms. I think 5 of them became hurricanes, and maybe 1 to 2 became major hurricanes. So the number of hurricanes and tropical systems have gone up over the last 30 years. But if the water temperatures stay warm over the course of the hurricane season, and let's say La Nina kicks in over this winter and sticks around on into the spring, we might have a faster start to hurricane season going into 2025. And of course, all of those updates are going to start to come in after the first of the year, and I'll bring those to you throughout the year on social media, and we'll probably touch on that on any kind of a midday show that I put together here starting up in December. Well, I really appreciate everybody hanging with me each and every weekday afternoon for lunch for Let's Talk Tropics. Again, this is going to be the season finale. We're done for the hurricane season, and we'll come back probably sometime in May prior to the 2025 hurricane season, especially when some of those new forecasts come down. Please like this video, subscribe to my channel, and also turn on those notifications. And don't forget, you can still hear my daily forecasts on Big 102.1, Planet Radio 106.7, and Freedom 95.1. That's mornings, middays, and the afternoon drive. And in between all of that, you can follow my social media pages both on Facebook and X. And if you wouldn't mind, tell your friends about Acadiana Weather Today on YouTube. I've had a little over almost 3,400 people who have subscribed. Thank you to all of the subscribers. And if you would tell your friends to go ahead and subscribe too, because there's still a lot that's going to be going on with this channel, even though hurricane season is coming to an end. I still have your daily morning forecast, and anytime any kind of severe weather comes up, I've got a severe weather stream that can run at just about any time. And of course, as we go into December, January, and February, that's kind of prime severe weather for us here in South Louisiana. Well, I hope you all have a great Thanksgiving. Be safe if you're doing any traveling. Don't forget, I'll have your morning forecast on Thanksgiving as well as Black Friday. And we'll also be back on Monday, not taking any time off for the early morning show. I'm Meteorologist Dave Baker. Have a great day, and I will see you on Thursday.